Meritorious manumission is essentially our first snitch law. It was a law put in place to divide the black community, to break us up in fragments to the point where, we essentially don't even trust each other. Um, Meritorious manumission was something in the slave days that guaranteed you freedom, essentially. If you um, created something for the benefit of white folks, you were guaranteed freedom. If you were to snitch on an uprising, you were guaranteed freedom. If you were to protect the white man with your life, you were guaranteed freedom. So essentially, a meritorious manumission was the first sellout law. Okay, so it was said that it was a ship called the Eagle, and on this slave ship aborted slaves. And upon the voyage, some brave ancestors, decided to pick up machetes or break away and got a hold to machetes and started an uprising on the ship. Now, it was said that the slaves, or the prisoners of war, I like to call them, pretty much had the upper hand of the uprising. They were dealt it was time to deal the last blow to the captain, and a 14-year-old black slave kid jumped in the way and took the brute force of the machete and got his arm chopped off. And the captain was able to regain, on control of the ship. Needless to say, our ancestors was hung and, executed for attempting the uprising. But this was a peculiar situation back then. This was the first time where white folks had to say, wait, we can't really treat them like shit if they save us. So birth meritorious manumission, right? So the 14-year-old boy was, guaranteed his freedom. They gave him to a benevolent society. They told him he was to be taught Christianity, and after the course, he was guaranteed freedom. If you look at Claude Anderson, Inappropriate Behavior, it's on YouTube. You can get the whole story. So, this is nothing I created, but I'm speaking about the law meritorious manumission, because of course it was a law. It was a law on the books that said that, if slaves behaved in inappropriate behavior such as meritorious manumission, then they were guaranteed freedom. So this hasn't really left our community. This haven't really left our organizations, even in our families. We still subjected, or we're still affected by this law. Like I said in the beginning, this law was set for us to not trust each other. It was set for us to completely sell out. If you see what the Negro doing with the Torah, in Africa, it just goes to show you that this law is still around and alive. Help wanted signs, from the Panthers to, help wanted, wanted signs with some type of monetary funding attached to it. Is still in play. So we're in a society where we can't really build organizations, families, or even communities, because we have to be worried about turncoats. In history, they taught us about, America's Benedict Arnolds and what they did with their Benedict Arnolds. And when it comes to the black community, this is something that we have not really figured out yet. Not saying that we have to, execute or murder anybody, but we have not developed a penalty for meritorious manumission. We have not developed an understanding on what will happen or what could happen when, the Jesse Jacksons sell us out, when the Al Sharptons sell us out. How do we perceive them in our community? This is something that we must think about because, like I said, meritorious manumission is alive and well, and a lot of our organizations is affected by it, whether we know it or not. It doesn't really take much for nowadays for anybody to be guaranteed what you call individualism. I'm gonna give you this for yourself and your family, and you can do this. There's plenty of examples in our history that gives us this view of meritorious mission. Whether we talking about Gene Roberts, Neil O'Donnell, you name them. The motherfucker that snitched on Nat Turner the night he was supposed to, set off the uprising. You know what I mean? So again, I don't think we'll ever be able to foolproof this situation, this meritorious manumission. But what I do know is conversations like this need to be had. We need to talk about the history of how we got to this point. Stop pointing fingers and understand that we all been played against each other. And if you look this up, you know what I mean, it'll let you know that this was a law. Now we're taught to respect the law, but this is the same law that told us we could not read and write. So this is just a little thought, you know what I'm saying? So, you can take it how you want it, you know what I'm saying, or don't. But, if you never heard the word of meritorious manumission, I suggest you look it up and study it.